It was very late at night, almost midnight. My phone suddenly lit up on the nightstand. It was a single message from my mom, Viralai. I was worried. Usually when she messages this late, it is bad news. I swiped the screen, ready for an emergency. But what I saw was not an emergency, it was a photo. The photo was of my childhood bedroom. The room I had grown up in. But it did not look like my room anymore. It looked terrible. Everything was shoved into big black garbage bags. My books, my trophies, my clothes, all of it was in the trash. Under the photo, my mom wrote a short message. "We need this room for Brooke's new walk-in closet. Come get your stuff by morning, or it goes to Goodwill." 3 seconds later, my sister Amara liked the message. That made it even worse. I felt frozen. I just stared at the screen. My heart was heavy. My hands were shaking. My mind felt empty. For 29 years, I had been living in this family, and no one really saw me. I felt invisible. My parents, Oren and Viralai, cared a lot about what other people thought. To the neighbors in Spokane, they looked rich and important. They drove fancy cars and had a daughter, Amara, who was a rising star in public relations. But in reality, they didn't have much money. I knew this. I knew because I had been secretly helping them pay their bills for years. They did not know that I knew. I had a career as a logistics manager. My job was to move things and make sure everything worked properly. I was good at finding problems before they became disasters. And for 10 years, my family has been my biggest problem. They were a constant challenge to manage, and they didn't even know it. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it. I remember the first time I helped them pay a bill. I was 22 years old. I had just finished college, and I had worked hard to pay for my degree myself. My mom called me crying because a card had been declined at the grocery store. But she wasn't buying groceries. She was buying champagne for Amara's graduation party. I paid for it. I told myself it was just a one-time thing. But one time turns into a habit. Soon it became the electric bill, then the car lease, then Amara's rent in the city, because she could not focus on her career if she was stressed about money. I gave nearly half my salary to my family, while I drove an old car and shopped at cheap stores. For many years, I told myself I was doing the right thing. It was my duty. But now, looking at the photo of my childhood room in black garbage bags, I finally understood the truth. It wasn't my duty. It was rented. I had been paying to live in this family. They didn't want me there for love. They only wanted what I could give them. When you grow up as the extra in a family, you start to think your life is a debt. You think that you only exist to help others. You think you must give everything and take nothing. So you pay. You pay with money. You pay with your time. You pay with your feelings. You hope that if you give enough, they will finally notice you. I had gotten used to their meanness. I had thought it was normal. I had thought that as long as I paid the bills, everything would be okay. But tonight it became clear. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my memories, my childhood, packed into trash bags so they could make room for Amara's fancy closet. I stood up and walked to my desk. I didn't go to their house to beg for my things. I didn't call to yell or cry. I sat at my computer and opened an old spreadsheet called Family Support. I had written down every time I helped them over the years. I scrolled to the bottom. The number staring back at me was huge. It wasn't just money. It was a record of my life. $250,000. That was how much I had given to a family that no longer wanted me. I closed the laptop. I didn't feel sad. I didn't cry. I felt something new. I felt clear. They wanted me gone. Fine. But they had forgotten one rule I knew from my work. If you remove the wall that holds everything up, the roof falls. A week went by with no word about my belongings. I thought maybe they had thrown everything away. I didn't ask. I didn't check. I just went to work. I waited. I knew they would need me again. They always did. Then a calendar invite arrived from my mom. It wasn't a question. It was a demand. Amara's vice president celebration. 6 p.m. The Onyx Room. No note. No apology. Just come. I went because I wanted to see them one last time. I wanted to see how my family acted before I stopped helping them. The room was exactly how they liked it. Too fancy. Too much marble. Too many chandeliers. The food looked expensive, but it didn't taste very good. Amara was in the middle, wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my first car. She was smiling and telling everyone how she got her new job. I stood by the bar, drinking club soda, watching her take credit for things I had done. 3 months ago, I had rewritten her resume. I had built her portfolio website. I had coached her for interviews. I had given her the right words to say. And now she was the star, and I was invisible. My dad tapped a spoon on a champagne glass. The room went quiet. He smiled and said, "She is the fire of this family, the vision." And to Callista, our steady rock, always there, always consistent. While Amara reaches for the stars, Callista keeps our feet on the ground. We need people like that, don't we? The room laughed politely. He hadn't just insulted me. He had told everyone I was less important than Amara. I was about to walk out when my dad came to me near the kitchen. He looked worried. "There's a problem with the card," he whispered. "The catering manager wants the final payment now, or they will stop the open bar." So I paid for it. My voice was flat. "How much?" I asked. $4,500, he said. I looked at him, and then at the man who had thrown my childhood memories in the trash just a week ago. He didn't feel sorry. He felt like he deserved it. I paid the bill. But I didn't crumple the receipt. I took a photo of it and emailed it to myself. "Everything okay, miss?" asked the manager. "Perfect," I said. "Just keeping records." I walked out of the party without saying goodbye. That $4,500 wasn't a gift. It was the price of my freedom. They thought I was their rock. They were about to find out what happens when the rock starts rolling. That night, I didn't sleep. I went to work, but my work was different now. It wasn't at a company. It was on my computer at home. I brewed black coffee, cracked my knuckles, and became someone new. Callista, the forensic auditor. I pulled bank statements going back 10 years. I accessed their shared cloud drive that my dad had given me years ago. I downloaded everything: tax returns, credit card statements, mortgage papers. I looked at every transaction, every payment, every lie. It was shocking. I saw the $20,000 I had lent them, listed in their notes as if it was just something I gave for fun. I saw where it went. Not to their business. Not to bills. But on a luxury cruise they said they won in a raffle. I saw the tuition payments for Amara. I saw the lease payments for a Range Rover I wasn't allowed to drive. I saw $500 dinners when I was eating old yogurt to save money. They hadn't been taking my money to survive. They were taking it to perform, to look rich. They were burning my future to keep their vanity warm. The more I looked, the more I understood. They were not just careless with money. They had been using me. Every dollar I gave them, every favor I did, every time I helped them, it was not appreciated. It was expected. I was their invisible worker, their quiet helper, their unpaid employee, and their human bank. I didn't feel angry at first. I felt sad. But soon, that sadness turned into a sharp focus. I realized I had all the proof I needed. I knew where every cent went. I knew every secret. I knew their system from the inside out. And now, I could finally take control of my own life. I made a plan. I would use the knowledge I had gathered. I would not let them take from me anymore. I would not pay for their mistakes. I would not let them erase my childhood or my memories. I started organizing the documents. I put every payment, every loan, every bill in a clear order. I wrote down everything in a way that I could see the patterns. How they lied. How they took advantage of me. How they made me feel invisible for years. Then I realized something. I didn't just have numbers and papers. I had power. I had knowledge. I had proof. And most importantly, I had myself. For the first time in my life, I was not doing this for them. I was doing this for me. I was not the invisible daughter. I was Callista, the person who knew the truth and could finally live for herself. I smiled for the first time in a long time. It was not a happy smile. It was a determined smile. I knew I had a lot of work ahead of me. But I also knew I would win. They had tried to erase me, but I was still here. They had tried to use me, but now I could use what I had learned. I went to bed that night, but not to sleep. I went to bed thinking, planning, imagining a new life where I was not a servant to their vanity. I imagined a life where I could keep my memories, my money, my dignity. I imagined a life where I was finally free. And I knew one thing for sure. They thought I was their rock. But rocks can move. And I was ready to roll. The final total at the bottom of the screen was glowing in bright red letters. $263,000. That was a lot of money. So much money it made my head spin. That number told me something very important. It told me how much their love had cost me. It was like a price tag on the way they had treated me, as if I didn't matter, as if I was invisible. But I wasn't finished. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what kind of mess they had gotten themselves into. I decided to dig deeper. I wanted to know about the money and property they owned, so I went to the public records. These are papers that anyone can look at if they want to find out who owns what, or how much money someone owes. I pulled up the papers for the house I had grown up in, the 4-bedroom colonial in the nice part of town. The house that I had been kicked out of years ago. And that's when I found the bomb. Not a real bomb, but something just as shocking. There was a lien, a second mortgage, taken out 3 years ago. A mortgage is a big loan that people take from the bank to buy a house. And a second mortgage is like taking a second loan on a house that you already owe money on. But this one was dangerous. The interest rate was very high. That means the money they had borrowed was growing faster than they could pay it back. Predatory is the word for that. It's like the bank was trying to trick them and make them pay more than they could. I wanted to know what they did with that money. I looked at the dates and checked their social media posts. That means I compared the papers with the pictures and updates they had shared online. And there it was, like a flashing sign. They had bought a vacation cabin in Lake Tahoe. They had posted pictures and said it belonged to a friend. But it wasn't true. They had bought it for themselves. They had taken money from our family home to buy a fun weekend getaway. But that wasn't all. They hadn't paid the main mortgage in 4 months. I stared at the paper that said, Notice of Default. That meant the bank was warning them that they were about to lose their house. They were living on the edge, having fun, spending money, and asking me to pay for their catering and parties, all while their house was falling apart financially. They weren't just mean, they were broke. I leaned back in my chair. I could almost see the old Callista sitting there, panicking. The old me would have sold my 401k, borrowed money, or done anything to save them. But that Callista was gone. I am a new person now. I sold my computer company 6 months ago for $90 million. That was something they didn't know because they had never asked about my job. I was no longer their little invisible daughter. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer, Lucian. It was 3 a.m, but he answered on the second ring. Callista, is everything okay? He asked, his voice sleepy but serious. I need to make an acquisition, I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. I want to buy something from a bank. A loan. A mortgage. First thing in the morning. Wait, what? He said. Which mortgage? Isn't that your parents' house? Yes, I said. Their house is in trouble. They're about to lose it. I want to buy the loan before it hits the open market. That means I become the person they owe money to. I know it sounds strange, but I'm not doing this to help them. I want to set up a company called Phoenix Holdings, keep my name off everything, buy the loan with cash, and have the deed in my hand by Friday. Then we proceed with collections. That means they have to start paying me. I hung up. I didn't feel guilty. I felt powerful. They had spent a decade treating me like a transaction. Now I was the one in control. By Friday, everything was ready. Phoenix Holdings officially owned the mortgage for 124 Oak Street. That meant I had the power to take the house, to evict them, and to demand payment in full. But my parents didn't know that yet. To them, it just looked like luck. On Saturday morning, my phone rang. It was Oren, my dad. I let it ring twice before answering, putting it on speaker, so I could keep packing a few boxes I had retrieved from storage. These were the few things they hadn't thrown away yet. Callista, we have a situation, he said. No hello. No apology for the party. Just the tone of a CEO summoning a worker. I'm busy, I said, folding a sweater. This isn't optional. It's an emergency. The bank says the house might be in trouble. A clerical error? I repeated. That's what he called 4 months of missed payments and a secret second mortgage. I can't help you with bank errors, Dad, I said. Just come over. We need to strategize, he said. Strategizing meant he wanted me to find a way to give them money. I almost said no. I almost told him right then that I wouldn't come. But I realized that for the foreclosure to feel real to them, they had to believe they had one last chance to manipulate me and watch it fail. I drove over an hour later. The house looked the same as I remembered it. The lawn was perfectly cut. The Mercedes was in the driveway. The outside looked like a perfect suburban dream. Inside, the tension was thick. My mother was pacing the living room, wringing her hands. Amara, my sister, was sitting on the sofa scrolling on her phone, looking bored but slightly annoyed that her weekend was being interrupted by money problems. Oren, my dad, sat at the head of the dining table, surrounded by papers, looking like a serious king waiting for tribute. Sit down, Callista, he commanded. I stayed standing. What's going on? The bank says we're behind on the mortgage. It must be a mistake. Maybe a glitch from when we refinanced for renovations. Renovations? I said quietly. He meant the Lake Tahoe cabin. They say we have to pay by Monday or the house will be sold, he continued. It's just a bridge loan, Callista. A small loan to hold things together. How much money? I asked. $50,000, he said like it was nothing. $50,000? I repeated, surprised. Yes. Just a bridge loan, Oren said. We know you have savings. You've always been good with money. Think about the family image. Your reputation, I said. Exactly, Oren said. How quickly can you transfer the funds? I assume your 401k has enough money to cover this. I'm not touching my 401k, I said. Then take out a personal loan, he demanded. You have perfect credit. We helped you build that credit. No, I said. My voice was strong and calm. The word hung in the air. Oren stood up, his face red. Ungrateful little girl. We raised you. We gave you everything. And now when we face a tiny hiccup, you're going to turn your back on us? You're going to let us lose our home? You're selfish, Amara spat out. Sitting on your money while Mom cries. Don't you even care about this family? If you don't do this, my mother said, her voice turning cold, don't bother coming back. We don't need a daughter who enjoys watching her parents suffer. You're either with us or you're cut off completely. They were trying to threaten me with the very thing I wanted, independence. They wanted me to give in to pay for their mistakes. Is that your final offer? Pay up or get out? I asked. Yes, they all shouted. I looked at them carefully. The entitlement, the cruelty, and the blindness to their own mistakes were obvious. I said, okay, I'll see you on Monday. I turned and walked out. They shouted after me, calling me names, saying I would regret it. But I didn't regret it. I smiled all the way to the car because they didn't know that on Monday, I wasn't coming back as their daughter with money. I was coming back as the owner with the keys. On Monday morning, I didn't go to work. I put on my best suit, a tailored charcoal blazer that cost more than their monthly mortgage, and drove to 124 Oak Street. I parked on the street, not in the driveway, leaving space for moving trucks that would arrive in 30 days. I walked up the path I had shoveled every winter for 18 years. I unlocked the door with the key I wasn't supposed to have anymore. Inside, they were waiting. My mother was pacing again. Amara was inspecting her nails. Oren sat at the head of the table, looking like a king waiting for his tribute. You're late, he said. I assume you have the check? I didn't answer. I walked past my mother and Amara, standing at the opposite end of the table. I placed a thick leather folder on the polished wood. Sit down, Oren commanded. I prefer to stand, I said. And you're not calling the bank, Oren. The bank doesn't own this house anymore. He froze. What are you talking about? Did they sell the loan? They did. To who? Phoenix Holdings. Who holds the loan? Phoenix Holdings? Who is that? Some vulture fund? Are they going to evict us? Amara asked. Phoenix Holdings, I said, opening the folder. It's a private company that buys loans from people who can't pay. And I now own your house. Their faces went pale. I could see the panic and confusion spreading across their expressions. They had spent all these years thinking they were safe, thinking I was just a kid who didn't have power. And now everything has changed. I wasn't their daughter anymore at that moment. I was the lender, the owner, the one in charge. I pulled out a single piece of paper, the deed to the house. It was stamped and signed, which made it official. I slid it across the table. It stopped right in front of my dad, my mom, and the only owner of Phoenix Holdings. The room went completely quiet. Not just quiet, but like someone had sucked all the air out. My mom stopped pacing back and forth, frozen in place. Brooke's phone fell to the floor with a loud clatter. Oren stared at the paper. His face turned pale, almost gray, until he looked like a ghost. You did this? He whispered, his voice shaking. I bought the debt, I said. I bought all the money you owed. I bought the second mortgage you took out for the cabin and the main loan. I own it all now. That means legally I am your landlord. How? My mom gasped. Where did you get that much money? You're just a logistics manager. I was a logistics manager, I said, my voice calm but sharp. I started a company that made software to help shipping and supply chains. 6 years later, I sold it to a huge shipping company. Last year, I got $90 million for it. Oren made a noise like he had been hit in the stomach. He slumped back in his chair, his eyes wide, staring at me like I was a stranger. And in a way, I was. The daughter he knew, the one who always followed orders, gave him money, and stayed invisible, was gone. 90 million? Amara squeaked, her voice small and trembling. Yes, I said, my voice steady. And you have 30 days. I pulled out another paper. The notice to leave the house. What? Oren said, trying to sound like he was in charge again. You can't do this. We're your family. This is our home. This is my home, I said. My name is on the deed. My money paid for this house, and you didn't take care of it. You haven't paid rent for 4 months, and you've been rude and mean to the owner." "Callista, please," Mom begged, tears rolling down her cheeks. "We have nowhere to go. You can't just make us leave." "I'm not just making you leave," I said. "I'm following the law because the debt is unpaid. It's business, Mom. Isn't that what you always told me?" "It's just business." I looked at them closely. They weren't powerful or important. They weren't rich people who really mattered. They were just 3 people who spent all their lives buying things they couldn't afford to show off to people they didn't even like, using money they took from me. "You have 30 days to leave. If you're not out by noon on the 30th, the sheriff will remove you. I suggest you start packing. You can use the boxes you packed my room with, they're in the garage." I started to walk away. "Wait!" Oren shouted, standing up. "We can fix this. We can work something out. You have $90 million. Why are you doing this over $50,000? I stopped at the door and looked back. "Because it's not about the money, Dad. It's about the fact that you were willing to kick me out for a tiny closet. You were willing to erase me. So now I'm just returning the favor." I tossed the keys onto the table. They landed with a loud clatter. "I'll see you in court if needed, but don't. My lawyers are much better than yours." I walked out the front door and down the path. I didn't look back. I got in my car, started it, and drove away. The house looked big and important, but in my rearview mirror, it looked small. 3 weeks later, the sun came up over the Gulf of Mexico. The sky was painted with orange and purple, like someone had taken a giant brush and swept color across it. I stood on the balcony of my new home in Sarasota, Florida, holding a mug of coffee. The coffee tasted like freedom, warm and rich. The air was warm and smelled like salt and flowers, so different from the stuffy, polished smell of my parents' house. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't living quietly in a small apartment to keep things secret. I bought this house in my name, big glass walls, modern design, right on the water. No fake companies, no fake names, just me, Callista. My phone was inside, turned off. I knew what was happening back in Spokane. Movers had come the day before. My parents were unpacking their lives in a small 2-bedroom condo on the edge of town. It was a nice condo, and I knew because I owned the building. I was letting them rent it at a regular price, which they probably thought was an insult. They were angry, embarrassed, and for the first time, they had to be responsible. Moving here wasn't running away. It was taking control of my life. For years, I thought being strong meant staying, paying, and putting up with their abuse. But now I saw the truth. You can't make people love you if they choose not to, and you can't find peace in a home where there's always fighting. Moving wasn't giving up. It was smart. I moved the most important thing I have, myself, to a place where I could be happy. I had cut out the people who hurt me and created a life that worked for me. I thought about Oren and Viralai. They were probably telling everyone that I had stolen their home. They were probably telling a story where they were the victims. Let them. Their opinion didn't matter to me. They spent their lives showing off things they couldn't afford to impress people who didn't care. In the end, they had nothing real. I had worked hard, learned skills, and built my own life. They had fake power. I had real power. When everything fell apart, their fake world crumbled, but mine stayed strong. I had learned the difference between what is worth something and what just costs a lot. I finished my coffee and walked down the private stairs to the beach. The sand was cool under my feet. I took a deep breath of air that didn't feel heavy with worry. I wasn't just starting a new life. I was creating a life where I could thrive. I had already started a new charity called the Invisible Fund. Its goal was simple: to help people who were being hurt by their family financially. I wanted to help others find a way out, just like I had. I walked toward the ocean. The water stretched far and wide. The waves crashed against the shore in a steady rhythm. The sound was calming. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't check my phone. For the first time in 29 years, I wasn't waiting for a message, a demand, or a problem. I was just here, fully present, fully free. The invisible girl was gone. The girl who hid in the corner, the girl who was afraid to speak, the girl who was treated like she didn't exist, she was gone. The woman walking on the beach now was strong, seen, and finally free. I was free to live my life my way. I was free to make choices for myself. I was free to be happy without asking anyone for permission. I took a long look at the ocean. It went on forever, and I felt like my future could go on forever too. There were no limits, no restrictions, no people trying to control me. I could build, create, and grow anything I wanted. I could travel, meet new people, learn new things, and help others who needed it. And that thought made me smile. I knew that what I had done wasn't mean or cruel. I hadn't wanted revenge. I had wanted fairness, and I had earned it. I had worked hard, learned how to make money, and used it wisely. I had taken care of myself when my family refused to. I had chosen me. The sun was higher in the sky now, warming my skin. The waves sparkled in the sunlight. I walked slowly along the water's edge, feeling the sand between my toes. I felt light, happy, and safe. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't waiting for anyone to tell me I wasn't good enough. I was finally living, really living. I looked up at the sky. The colors were fading into blue, and the sun was bright. I took a deep breath, feeling the salty air fill my lungs. I felt strong. I felt ready. I felt like anything was possible. The invisible girl was gone. The woman standing on the beach, looking at the endless ocean, smiling at the freedom she had earned, was here to stay. She was seen. She was powerful. She was finally undeniably free.